Washington Times front page for Thursday, November 10th, 2022. Thanks for joining us. I'm George Gerbo. President Biden took a victory lap by arguing Democrats avoided a shellacking in the midterm elections because his party's candidates and policies are popular with the American people. Jeff Murdoch and Joseph Clark report the president hailed the election results as a good day for democracy, while acknowledging that not all races had been decided. While Republicans are likely to eke out control of the House, the Senate remains up for grabs, with critical races in Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia undecided. The tight midterm races defied expectations of a red wave of conservative victories. Now Republicans are trying to figure out why predicted big gains over Democrats didn't materialize. For many, Seth MacLachlan and Ramsey Touchberry report, the answer came back to former President Trump, who saddled the Republican Party with extreme candidates and iffy election stances that didn't play well with a majority of voters. Former Virginia Congressman Tom Davis said Trump bungled the candidates he picked and foisted some bad matches onto states where they were running. Davis also said the former president made the elections too much about himself and cut into Republicans' chief advantage of making the elections about President Biden. The bad news for Trump is good news for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, whose landslide re-election win reverberated into the 2024 presidential election and solidified his place atop the potential field. If DeSantis jumps into the presidential race, Susan Ferricchio reports, he'll likely be backed by dozens of ultra-wealthy donors. During this cycle, they pushed his re-election campaign funding to near record levels for a governor's race. DeSantis defeated Democrat Charlie Crist, himself a former Florida governor, by nearly 20 percentage points. DeSantis won his first term in 2018 by less than half a percentage point. His predecessor, Republican Rick Scott, won his second term by only a single point in 2014. You can read all these stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page. You can also find our entire lineup of news, commentary, and sports podcasts at WashingtonTimes.com/podcasts. Republicans showed improvement among Latino voters on an otherwise lackluster night, claiming 39% of their vote nationally, according to broadcast network Exit Polling. The showing was powered by strong performances in Florida, Stephen Dinan reports, where DeSantis won 57% of Latino voters, and in Texas, where Governor Greg Abbott won 40% of Latinos en route to his third term. Democrats were right about abortion rights, as they were a major factor in driving turnout and deciding races. Valerie Richardson reports pro-abortion groups were cheering a string of wins in state referendums on abortion rights, including an unexpected victory in Kentucky. Anti-abortion groups were noting a list of Republican candidates who won their races after taking strong stands for abortion restrictions and fighting Democratic efforts to portray them as extremists. GOP leadership strategy was to deflect on abortion or dismiss it as a state issue. Democrats were then quick to claim the issue, and the women energized by the Supreme Court's decision this summer striking down Roe v. Wade, which helped them avoid the losses that the party in the White House historically sustains in midterm elections. And finally, in Ukraine, Russian military commanders said their troops will retreat from the Ukrainian city of Kherson, marking perhaps the most embarrassing defeat for Russia so far in 8 months of war. It's a strategic and symbolic retreat, Ben Wolfgang reports. Kherson was one of the first major Ukrainian cities to fall to Russian forces in the days after the February 24th invasion and was the only regional capital still in Russia's hands. The Russian general leading the country's forces in Ukraine said Russian troops could face complete isolation amid a Ukrainian counterattack, which has pummeled Russian supply lines over the past several weeks. Find all of today's front page stories at WashingtonTimes.com/front page or on the Washington Times app, and find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Washington Times in any major podcast app. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Wash Times for breaking news, sports, commentary, and more. For the Washington Times, I'm George Gerbo.